embers in the dark. The night sky over Veyrith Prime burned. Amber clouds of smoke coiled upward, hiding the cold stars and reflecting the glow of distant fires. Every few minutes, another dull thud rolled across the ruined city as the Zhur's siege cannons fired. The ground trembled. Inside the fractured dome of the colony's central district, Commander Rethka stood with his hands braced on the edge of a shattered console, watching casualty reports scroll in flickering glyphs. Sector 7 is gone, one of his aides croaked. Her voice was hoarse from too many hours of shouting over alarms. No survivors. Rethka shut his eyes for a heartbeat. He could almost hear the screams carried by the wind, though he knew it was his mind playing cruel tricks. The enemy had been methodical, pressing forward in armored columns, driving civilians from safe corridors, collapsing tunnels to cut off retreat. They wanted terror as much as territory. "How long before the dome fails entirely?" he asked, forcing steadiness into his tone. 2 hours, the engineer replied, her mandibles clicking nervously. "Maybe less." He nodded. Outside, he could hear the deep, insectal growl of a Zhur war machine stalking through the streets. Its heavy legs crushed rubble to powder. The defenders had nothing left but improvised mines and short-range cannons, useless against those armored beasts. In the bunker's corner, a group of young soldiers huddled near a heater. Their scales were dull with dust and ash, their eyes hollow. One of them whispered, loud enough for Rethka to hear. "They promised us help, the humans, didn't they?" Rethka straightened. The words stung. He remembered sending the distress call 3 weeks ago, encrypted and urgent, toward the Terran frontier. The humans had been allies once, fierce, unpredictable allies, but since the Rift Wars, their fleets had withdrawn. Rumors said they were too busy fighting their own chaos. He looked at the young soldier. "They may not have heard us," he said carefully. Another soldier snorted. Or they heard and chose not to answer. Rethka had no answer for that. He turned back to the console. The defenders had 6 artillery rounds left, 2 functioning shields, and not enough med gel to treat the wounded. The council had already discussed surrender. The Zhur terms were simple. Those who knelt would be enslaved. Those who resisted would be burned. The commander's claws dug into the console's metal edge. Surrender meant living as a husk, watching his people broken and sold. Fighting meant dying before the next sunrise. Neither felt like victory. An aide interrupted his thoughts. "Commander, incoming message from the eastern barricade." Static hissed through the comms before a tired voice spoke. "Sir, they're pushing again. We can't." A crash drowned out the rest, then silence. Rethka slammed his fist on the console. "Tell them to fall back to the inner line. Now!" The engineer shook her head. "There is no inner line, Commander. Not anymore." For a long moment, the only sound was the distant thunder of weapons and the low hum of the failing shield generators. Then, far overhead, the sky flared as another missile struck the outer dome. Dust rained from the ceiling. A child cried somewhere deeper in the bunker. Rethka stepped away from the console and walked to the observation slit. Outside, flames licked at twisted metal. The enemy banners, red with jagged black sigils, fluttered in the wind. He could see the silhouettes of Zhur soldiers advancing through the haze, slow and patient, knowing there was nowhere left to run. A cold weight settled in his chest. So this is how it ends, he thought. Forgotten by allies. Hunted to extinction. He placed one clawed hand against the glass and whispered, almost to himself, "If anyone hears us, if anyone remembers us, please." The bunker lights flickered. Another tremor shook the floor, stronger than before. Somewhere above, metal screamed as a tower collapsed. The aides and soldiers looked to him, waiting for an order he no longer had the strength to give. Rethka straightened, forced a bitter smile, and drew his sidearm. "If this is our night," he said, "let us make the Zhur remember it." No one cheered. They simply nodded, grim and resolute. Around them, the sounds of war closed in, an unending storm. And in the depths of the dark sky, far beyond the reach of their failing sensors, something ancient and wounded began to stir. Whispers of a ghost. The hours after midnight brought no relief. Smoke hung low over Veyrith Prime's shattered avenues, thick enough to choke the breath from the living. Commander Rethka paced the bunker's command chamber, claws clicking softly against the deck. He could feel the morale of his remaining troops unraveling thread by thread. Every few minutes, another message arrived, another barricade lost, another squad gone silent. "Commander," said Yevril, the comms engineer, her voice tight, "I've intercepted something strange." Rethka turned, weary eyes narrowing. "Strange?" From the Zhur. She shook her head and adjusted the cracked receiver. The speakers filled with a hiss that made the soldiers flinch. Beneath that hiss was something else, a low, rhythmic growl like distant thunder. Then a metallic snarl cut through the noise, a sound so alien it raised the scales on Rethka's neck. "What is that?" whispered one of the soldiers. Yevril kept adjusting dials. "I don't know. It's faint, distorted, but it's not Zhur encryption." She looked up. "It's coming from the Abyss corridor." The room fell silent. Even the air recyclers seemed to hold their breath. The Abyss corridor, an ancient, unlit warp lane through the edge of known space, was spoken of only in grim tales. No ships traveled it anymore. The gravitational storms alone were said to tear fleets apart. "Play it again," Rethka ordered. The growling signal repeated, a layered, pulsing roar that reminded him of an animal hunting in the dark. Yevril's brow ridges furrowed. There are fragments of a language buried in it. Human standard, maybe, but it's old. Very old. At that word, human, the chamber stirred. Soldiers whispered, glancing at each other. One, a young private named Thal, muttered, "The humans left us. Why would they be anywhere near the Abyss?" Another voice spoke from the corner. It belonged to Seared, the oldest veteran among them, his carapace dull and scarred. He leaned on his rifle like a staff. "There is a tale," Seared rasped, "of a Terran warship called Revenant. They said it was too dangerous to build twice. Too unpredictable. It vanished at Electo Rift, never came back." Thal scoffed. "Ghost stories won't save us." Seared's eyes gleamed faintly. "Maybe, but they said the Revenant was born to hunt in places no sane captain would go. The Abyss would suit it." Rethka's mandibles clicked softly as he thought. He remembered old reports from the war archives, mentions of Terran ships that fought like living beasts. It seemed absurd to hope. And yet, "Commander," Yevril said suddenly, voice sharp with urgency, "there's more. Gravitational readings. Just now, something large is forcing a transition near the corridor's mouth. It's tearing through subspace as we speak." Rethka moved to the main hollow table. Grainy sensor data painted the air with shifting shapes. A single massive signature emerged from the static, flickering like a heartbeat. His mind raced. No friendly ships were scheduled. No other colony had the resources. "Can the Zhur see it?" he asked. "They're repositioning already," Yevril replied, eyes wide. "Look, two cruisers breaking orbit, moving toward the corridor." Rethka's pulse quickened. The Zhur didn't move like that unless they felt threatened. Whatever was coming, it was not one of theirs. "Is it human?" Thal asked. Rethka stared at the pulsing signature. He wanted to say yes, but caution held his tongue. "We don't know. We can't assume." Outside, the sky lit with more bombardment, closer now. Dust rained from the ceiling. A little girl, one of the refugees hidden in the back, whimpered softly. Rethka lowered his head. "If that signal is nothing, we die as planned. If it is something else, then maybe there's a chance." He turned to his second-in-command. "Pull back everyone you can to the central dome. We hold as long as we can." "Yes, Commander." Yevril kept working. The signal grew clearer with every cycle, the growl resolving into something almost like a voice, distorted but unmistakably human. "Stand by. Hold your ground." She looked up, breath catching. "Sir, I think it's talking to us." Before Rethka could answer, alarm shrieked through the bunker. Long-range sensors flashed red. A massive object had just dropped from warp near the system's edge. The data feed stuttered, then displayed a jagged silhouette, a hull unlike anything they'd seen in years. The voice returned, stronger this time, deep and metallic, carrying through every speaker in the bunker. "This is TWS Revenant. Allied signatures confirmed. Hold your ground. We are inbound. The chamber froze. Even the wounded lifted their heads. Seared's voice broke the silence. Trembling with awe, the ghost is real. Rethka felt his claws tighten around the edge of the console. For the first time in endless nights, something fierce burned in his chest. Hope, raw and dangerous. Then we will hold, he whispered, eyes fixed on the distant stars. By the void, we will hold, the howl of the abyss. The first sign was not light, but sound. High above Veyrith Prime's smoking atmosphere, the sky itself seemed to shiver. A deep, bone-rattling vibration rolled across the dome, building into a wailing shriek that made even the Zhur hesitate mid-advance. Soldiers on both sides looked upward as the night split apart. A lance of warped light tore through the upper clouds. Reality rippled, twisted, and a massive shadow clawed its way into orbit. Rethka stood at the command slit, eyes wide, mandibles parted in disbelief. By the stars, the ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its hull was a patchwork of ancient armor and fresh scars, bristling with weapons that glowed like angry suns. Its engines flared in a strange rhythm, a predator's heartbeat, and with each pulse the terrible howl grew louder. The Zhur anti-orbital cannons reacted first. Bright spears of plasma shot skyward. The dark silhouette moved with uncanny speed, rolling to one side, its shields flaring bright blue as the attack struck home. Then it answered. Columns of light roared from the ship's broadside. Missiles, sleek and silent, peeled away and arced downward, trailing faint ion trails. Seconds later, the ground shook as Zhur forward batteries exploded in blinding fireballs. Cheers erupted from the bunker below, raw and ragged. Comms! Rethka barked. Give me that ship now. Yevril's hands flew over the controls. Trying, there's interference from the weapon's discharge. Wait, signal locking. The speakers hissed, then a voice, clear and calm despite the chaos. Ground forces, this is Captain Mara Voss of the Terran Warship Revenant. Sorry we're late. Rethka swallowed hard, his heart pounding. This is Commander Rethka of Veyrith Prime Defense. We thought. His voice broke, and he forced it steady. We thought no help was coming. A pause. Then, help has arrived. Hold your positions. Outside, the Revenant pivoted, its engines flaring as it accelerated toward a formation of Zhur cruisers scrambling to intercept. The enemy fired again, but the human ship moved like a living thing, cutting through their lines with ruthless grace. Kinetic lances punched through one cruiser's hull, splitting it apart in a shower of molten fragments. Another missile spread shredded two more ships, debris spiraling into the void. Inside the bunker, the soldiers watched the feed with disbelief and growing awe. The young Private Thal whispered, "They fight like the old legends." Rethka clenched his claws. They are the old legends. On the surface, Zhur infantry regrouped, their advance stuttering under the sudden bombardment. Rethka saw the hesitation ripple through their ranks and seized the moment. He grabbed his rifle and turned to his troops. They bleed. Push them back. The defenders surged out from behind the crumbling barricades. Veyrith carbines flashed, cutting into stunned Zhur squads. Above, Revenant's cannons spoke again, precise blasts tearing apart enemy armor that had seemed invincible hours earlier. Then the sky flared with fire. Something huge was dropping through the atmosphere. Sleek black pods, dozens of them, leaving trails of blue-white flame. They slammed into the rubble with seismic force, splitting open to reveal towering figures in dark power armor. Terran Marines, their visors glowing amber, weapons humming with lethal energy. One step forward, voice amplified through a speaker. Veyrith defenders, form on us. Let's clear your city. The reaction was electric. Rethka's squad linked with the humans, moving street by street. Terran Marines moved like predators, every motion precise, every shot fatal. One Marine covered Rethka as they pushed through a collapsed avenue, his heavy rifle ripping through Zhur infantry as if they were paper. Overhead, the howl of the Revenant echoed, a constant, unearthly keening that made the Zhur falter. They began to pull back, confusion spreading through their ranks as their communications fractured under jamming fire. "Commander," Yevril's voice crackled in his ear. "Sensors show enemy units retreating toward the western evacuation corridor. The Revenant is pursuing." "Good," Rethka growled, ducking behind a fractured wall as plasma bolts sizzled past. "Let them run." He caught his breath, looking around at the mingled squads of Veyrith and Terran soldiers pressing forward together. For so long, he had fought with nothing but despair. Now he felt something raw and fierce swelling in his chest, something he had not dared feel in weeks. Hope. Above them, the Revenant arced through the sky like a hunting beast, engines howling as it banked toward the remaining Zhur ships. Flames reflected across its scarred hull, turning it into a streak of living fire. Rethka raised his rifle high and roared to his troops, voice breaking with emotion. "For Veyrith, for the stars." The charge began anew, and for the first time since the siege began, the defenders were not alone. Fire and oaths. Dawn broke over Veyrith Prime in streaks of gold and ash. The sun's rays pierced through the drifting smoke, casting long shadows over the ruined city. The Zhur were no longer advancing. They were running. Commander Rethka crouched behind the remains of a collapsed hablock, breathing hard. Beside him, a Terran Marine in midnight black armor crouched low, visor glinting as he surveyed the next street. "They've set up automated turrets in the plaza ahead," the Marine said through his helmet speaker. His voice was calm, controlled. "We take them out, the rest of their line collapses." Rethka nodded, adjusting his carbine. "My people will flank from the east. Your weapons will clear you a path," the Marine finished, already signaling his squad. Above them, the sky held again. The Revenant screamed low over the city, its engines shrieking as it dived through the thinning clouds. Twin lances of energy roared from its forward cannons, slicing apart a Zhur dropship before it could lift off. The wreck tumbled in a ball of fire, crashing into the distant plains. The defenders surged forward. Rethka's squad wove through shattered alleyways while the Terran Marines advanced in the open, their armor shrugging off the last desperate Zhur fire. Explosions rippled through the plaza as the turrets were neutralized one by one. By mid-morning, the Zhur command node was within reach, a fortified crawler bristling with weapons and shields. Once, it would have been untouchable. Now, with the Revenant circling above, it felt suddenly fragile. Captain Mara Voss's voice came over comms, steady and fierce. "Allied forces, this is Revenant. Final strike authorized. Mark your positions." "Positions marked," Rethka replied, heart thundering. He darted from cover to cover as his troops planted beacons around the crawler's perimeter. Zhur soldiers roared and fired blindly, but panic was in their movements now, not precision. "Charges set," Yevril shouted over the comms. Rethka took a deep breath. "Captain Voss, you are clear to fire." A pause, then understood. "Brace yourselves." The sky screamed. The Revenant descended almost vertically, engines shrieking like some ancient predator diving for the kill. Its shadow swallowed the plaza. In one terrible moment, it unleashed a coordinated strike, kinetic rods slamming down like thunderbolts, tearing through the crawler's shields, shattering armor, detonating ammunition stores. The explosion was a sun-bright bloom that sent shockwaves through the streets, knocking Rethka to his knees. When the smoke cleared, the crawler was a twisted wreck, flames licking at the sky. The Zhur lines broke. Entire squads threw down weapons and fled. Those who resisted were swiftly cut down by Terran Marines and Veyrith fighters moving as one. By midday, the city was theirs again. Rethka stood atop the cracked remains of the central dome, watching as Terran med drones darted through the ruins, tending to wounded Veyrith and human alike. Smoke curled lazily into the blue sky. For the first time in weeks, he felt the wind on his face and did not hear gunfire. A shadow fell over him. He turned to see Captain Mara Voss climbing the ramp in her dark gray field armor, helmet tucked under her arm. Her hair was streaked with gray, her expression tired but steady. "You held," she said simply. Rethka bowed his head. We held because you came. She shook her head. You held because you refused to break. Her gaze swept the ruined city, the survivors working amidst rubble. The Revenant has been out here a long time. We've seen colonies abandoned, allies forgotten. Not here. You came through the abyss, Rethka said quietly. No one does that. Voss's lips curved into the faintest smile. We were built to go where no one else can. To answer calls no one else will. She looked him in the eye. Humanity remembers its oaths. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind carried distant cheers as another pocket of Zhur surrendered. Children ran through the rubble, laughing despite the scars around them. Rethka felt a surge of emotion so strong it almost unsteadied him. We thought no help was coming, he said softly. Voss nodded, eyes distant. We all think that sometimes until the howl comes. Above them, the Revenant loomed in low orbit, its scarred hull glowing in the sunlight. Engines rumbled softly, as if the ship itself were breathing, waiting, ready. Rethka extended a clawed hand. Captain Voss, thank you. From all of Veyrith. She clasped his hand firmly. Rest, Commander. Rebuild. When the time comes, and someone else thinks no help is coming. She glanced up at her ship, her voice a vow. We'll be there. The engines of the Revenant flared, a low growl echoing across the city. Soldiers and civilians alike turned to watch as the legendary warship angled toward the stars. With a final, fading howl, it slipped back into the void, leaving behind a saved world and a story that would be told for generations.